Hello and welcome to Staying Ahead of the Curve. I'm Jeff Snyder, Vice President and Senior Consultant with Cammack Retirement Group. And joining me now is the Executive Director of the National Institute of Retirement Security, Diane Oakley. Diane, thanks for joining us back on the show today.
Thanks, Jeff. Glad to be back here with you again.
So NERS does a lot of research, and I think you've got some new research that you want to release and talk to our audience about. So why don't you go ahead and tell us what you got in the cooker?
Thanks. Actually, we've got a project that we've done for the last several years. We're doing an update. We update the data every 2 years. What we do is we look at what happens in our economy when retirees, both from the private sector and the public sector, federal and state and local governments, receive benefits from their defined benefit pension plans. And one of the things that we do is we trace the benefit payments that today go to, well, 2014, we looked at the data in terms of how much income went to retirees in that year. And there were 24.3 million retirees receiving benefits from defined benefit plans. Most of those beneficiaries were from the private sector in number, but the private sector, they're less, they could represent less than of the percent of private sector workforce or retirees. With public sector employees, most typically about 85% of them are covered by a DB plan. So most of the public employees are in this survey. What we found was the $520 billion that goes to those retirees. When that money gets spent by those retirees, and they do spend that money, they generate about $1.2 trillion in economic output, because that retiree takes the money. Some of the money goes to pay for their housing cost. Some of the money goes to pay for food, maybe taking their grandkids out. Those are some of the key places where they spend their money. Last time we did the report, we did a little feature on a small grocery restaurant up in the foothills of Virginia. And that community's gotten a lot more retirees, and that owner of that small little family restaurant understood that these retirees spending their money in his community meant that he could hire people.
That's a good thing, right?
It's a great thing. And so one of the things we also study in that economic impact is how many jobs does this spending by retirees support? And so in 2014, that spending supported 7 million jobs in our economy. And I think, if you look back at some of the numbers jobs have been created since the financial crisis, we're somewhere around 14, maybe over 14 million jobs. So you think about that, that's equivalent of about half of the jobs that it took us since 2009 to create in the economy, and how important those jobs are, because those jobs actually generate about another $350 billion of salary to those employees, which goes back into the economy and then helps create jobs. So this is all based on something called a multiplier effect. So each dollar of retiree spending actually generates $2.21 of economic activity. So that's a real important thing for people to understand, how important retirees having a predictable income is.
I certainly agree, and I think oftentimes people think of things as a zero-sum game, and they don't think about the impact of something like a retiree getting a benefit and what they do with that benefit. And really, we're kind of all in this together. I mean, what I do can impact other people, and what groups of people do can impact other generations. And I think we've kind of got to get ourselves out of this mindset. And I know you and I have talked in other episodes about this national conversation and creating that culture of savings. And this is really part of that. I mean, if generations in totality can do the right thing and put money away and be part of a system that they're getting a good benefit, they will be contributing to the economy in their retirement. If not, and there's a retirement deficit, they're not going to have the dollars, and that could potentially slow an economy. So we're all kind of in it together, and hopefully we need to figure out a way to message that. I think that needs to be our takeaway here.
That really is an important takeaway. And it really, when you think about it, getting out of the Depression, one of the key things that Social Security was created as an outgrowth of the Depression, because older Americans were substantially living in poverty. we have made such great strides. So there's really, the poverty rate for older Americans is less than 10%. And that's important. But if we don't start to do some things, we could see that change. You know, and the other place that we've talked about, Jeff, is public sector pensions. And so we do a special analysis for public sector pensions. We put data out on a state-by-state basis. But nationally what we do is we look at how much money really does the taxpayer put into the public pension. And I think most people are really surprised that the taxpayer only pays about 25% of the cost of the benefit going to retirees. The balance of that comes from the employee contributions plus the interest that those funds accumulate over the time they invest the dollars that go out to pay the retirees. So when we look at, you know, what's the leverage that the taxpayer dollar gets in terms of economic output for the money going to the pension plans of public sector workers, what we find is they get $9 back into the economy for every dollar that goes into that public sector pension. And I think that's a real important thing for people to understand too, as we think about what's going on in the states on a state-by-state basis. One other key thing that we look at in our report, I mentioned the analysis we did last time we did the report about spending it and looking at a place where people were spending it. One of the key places where retirees spend their money is they spend it on real estate. They either are spending it for rent or for their house. Their mortgage money payment, the principal payment doesn't count as spending in the lexicon of spending. That's just an asset transfer. It's going from your finances to your house equity, housing equity. But the spending that retirees do for real estate is the most significant area of the economy that's impacted by retiree spending. Almost 400,000 jobs in 2014 came from the retirees spending money on real estate. But the other piece that's interesting about pensions, especially public pensions, is they're investing in diverse portfolios. So they're actually on both sides of the real estate game in the sense that the money going to retirees is putting jobs into the community because of what their spending is doing. But at the same time, about just a little bit under 6% of the aggregate sort of look at pension plan investments goes towards real estate investments. And we don't have the data nationally because we really can't do that of what kind of a job impact that has. But two of the largest pension systems in the country are in California, CalSTRS and CalPERS, and they actually do issue an economic impact report that includes their real estate investing and the impact it has on jobs in the state of California. And California is a portion of their real estate investing, but from the portion that they invest in real estate in California, they know they generate almost about 200,000 jobs in California based on those investments. So it's interesting to see how the pension plans are doing this job creation really on both sides of their balance sheet, you know, and the balance sheet that they maintain for their investments, but also on the money coming out of their fund going to retirees is having impacts.
And also infrastructure.
Infrastructure as well. I don't have the numbers on infrastructure. I was focusing on real estate more because of that, but infrastructure is a key point.
But it struck an interest in when I thinking about what you're saying, and that also the plowing back, for lack of a better term, money into the infrastructure within that locality, that state, or elsewhere. And you think about it. So, I hadn't really thought about it until you had mentioned it. All this impact and how it all kind of works together.
It does. The interesting thing is we're looking at these data today. In 2009 we did the data and we had about 6 million jobs that the pension spending of retirees. And in 2009, 6 million jobs that you could keep in the economy was a key thing. That's the other really important thing to understand about when we give people benefits in retirement, like from a defined benefit plan as opposed to a defined contribution plan, is those retirees can keep on spending. One of the key things we saw among retirees as a result of the financial crisis was they didn't want to spend their money. And in fact, one of the largest volumes of letters we got when I was up on the Hill at that time was from retirees who said, don't make me take my minimum distribution.
Oh.
Don't
get me started on that one.
It was just like, I don't want to take it because if I take it, I'm going to take money out of my pension when my pension's already down by 30%. So, we know that when you're in a defined contribution plan, you don't have that same predictability as a source of income to spend. So that's one of the key things about this Pensionomics report that we're putting out there. And we can give state-by-state numbers for policymakers. It is an interesting thing for us to look at and understand and know that this is a key part of our economy. If retirees don't have money to spend, and especially we're looking at baby boomers today, the newest retirees, this is a generation whose spending patterns have pushed our economy to the level that it is, being one of the best economies in the world. We've come out of the Great Recession in the best place as the rest of the world. And a lot of that is, we were told what we were told. The first thing we were told, go out and spend money. So that's a real important thing. When we spend money, we generate growth. And that's a key.
Diane Oakley, thank you. Very fascinating topic, and look to have you back on future episodes of the show with your latest research.
Be happy to be back, Jeff. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good.